Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Ryan Newman here to talk Week 5, our favorite bets, talk around the league. Joined here as always by Connor Allen. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Finally out of wedding season, so excited to focus on more football. We were shooting out some prop plays last weekend from the cocktail hour. Thankfully, shout out to the team there. Shout out Monotone. Shout out, Jake for helping me out there, getting out the Jaden Reed overs. Those obviously came through pretty big. So thankfully out of that, excited to just talk some football and make some more bets.
Yeah, I knew you were at a wedding, and I see you active in the chats, and I'm just thinking about your poor wife, just because I think it was her friend's wedding too. I'm she knows what she's getting into, but it's that time of year. So, excited to talk Week 5. Our guest today, if we were to have friends of the show, this is our Mount Rushmore friend of the show. Back when we first started, even 7 years ago, this gentleman joined us multiple times, and I think every time we've had guests, for years we didn't, but when we've had guests, this has always been at the top of the board for us. It's the host of the Simple Handicap podcast. He's part of the team over at Right Angle Sports. He's coming off of a red hot Week 4 over there as well. I want to talk about his golf game as well if he gets time. It's Adam Chernoff. What's going on, buddy?
How are you guys? Good to be back on the show. It's been a little bit, but I'm glad to see everything continuing to grow. Lots of prop success for you guys as well. So good to be back chatting with you guys.
Yeah. How's the swing? You're up in Canada. Your season's even shorter than mine here in Chicagoland. I know you've been working on some stuff. You've been playing a little bit, or how are we doing?
So I'm in the Pacific Northwest now. So it's actually year-round golf. But the biggest hurdle from November to March is just daylight and football going on. So as long as it's light out, a guy can get out. So it's been good. First year I've really gone into like full-time working with a pro. So there have been some pretty significant gains to everywhere in the game, and now it's just a matter of trying to dial things in a little bit. So it's been as good of a golf year for me as ever on the course.
Absolutely love to hear that. Great God's game. So you play that forever.
It's a full divide between thinking about football and then thinking about playing golf that just is a conflicting back and forth all day long, every single day, all year. So it's a battle mentally.
I'll tell you what, after a week that I had last week, one thing I wanted to do was get on the course so I can get my mind off of what happened to me. I did not have the week that you had at Right Angle Sports last week, that Connor had last week either. I need to get on the course and get my mind right and lose myself a little bit in the swing and feel good after taking an absolute drubbing in Week 4.
The hard part is that I find is when you're like, there's no good time to golf during the NFL week. And the guilt, if you get out for 9 and you're out there for, let's say, like an hour 40, if you've got good pace, like you can kind of get away with that, but to commit to turning the phone off and putting it in the bag and being out there for like 4.5 hours, it just riddles me with guilt. I don't know how you guys feel. It's hard. I wish there was another answer to that.
The moment that I stepped into the church on Saturday, the Jordan Love and Justin Herbert news broke that they were both playing. Like I had like multiple plays queued up, ready to go. And like I was in a church. So I'm like, I'm checking my watch. Like I seeing it buzz on my Apple Watch. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like the moment that I step into a place where I can't just have my phone out, blasting things out. Like we kind of knew that they were playing, but like it wasn't 100%. I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Do you do the fantasy life alerts on the Apple Watch?
Yep. Yeah.
No, it's like you're tethered to it. You don't get anything the minute you leave. One comes through, and you're like, it's every single time all year. It happens.
Without fail, literally without fail.
Yep. That's it.
You golf, you're sitting in the car. Like I use my phone for GPS too, for like, kind of, keeping my score, all those different things. So like kind of still on the phone a little bit. Just it's more of the time more than anything, just all the other responsibilities. Yeah. It's like, definitely a 6-day, 7-day work week almost. So it's like I don't do much on Saturdays, except once my wife falls asleep. It's really hard to be like, hey, honey, I need to take time off on Saturday to go golf with the boys for 5 hours. I have children. I like them. I like spending time with them. That's another piece of it too. So, try to get as much in as possible.
I agree. And the guilt that you get when you do that, not from missing football, but also missing the family, just kills you as well. I wish there was a good answer to this.
Yeah. We'll try to jam as much golf in around it, but we're here to talk Week 5. Again, want to remind folks, if you're hanging out with us now on YouTube, we appreciate it. Be a pal, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, whatever you do. If you're watching on YouTube, the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel, Move the Line in podcast form, wherever you listen, all those things go a long way in helping us as well. This is the game preview show. We're going to talk about some of our best bets and favorite games of the week. Prop drop is on Friday. So if you like props, you want some of the stuff that we're doing there, that is Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern. Myself, Connor, John Hyslop. So come back for that show as well. All the official plays that we push out on that prop show specifically, you need the betting subscription. Those all go into our Discord for subscribers first. So they do have action and they move quickly. So having the subscription helps you get the best of the number, helps you get the best price. All those things matter a ton. Finding any edge is possible. So great ways to do it right now. You can head over to 4for4.com/plans to scoop up the betting subscription. It gets you access to everything we do. So if you want to do every article, tool, rankings, projections, you're grinding DFS, all that stuff is all there. Discord chats and channels for everything, pick'em sites, all that stuff. Right now we have a partner with Rebets. You download the app, Rebet app. It is a DFS pick'em sweepstake / sportsbook. It's got a little bit of everything. They have a derivative of Prop Builder as well. So if you need another outs, Rebet has it for you. You use promo code 4for4bet. So no S, 4for4bet, $10 on Rebet, and you'll get a free 4for4 betting subscription for the rest of the season. That's it. No loophole. Right now it's almost $200. If you just go to the website and buy it, $10 with Rebet. Great deal. Check it out. Reach out to us if you have more information. We're happy to help you out with that. All right, gentlemen, let's get to some of the stuff that's going on in the league. We'll get to some of our games. What surprised you the most in the past week, Adam? I mean, a lot of stuff going on, team related. I think kind of the buzzy teams in particular, and I don't want to take them away from you. I mean, I think the Vikings and Commanders have kind of probably changed the most in, market sentiment since when we first kicked off. Just been a lot going on. It could be team related, player related. What surprised you the most in week 4?
Week 4 surprise specifically, probably I would say how dominant the Vikings looked early in the game against the Packers. That was kind of a culmination of Packers missed field goals, turnovers, mistakes, but just how well Minnesota comes into games from a prep standpoint is incredible to see. And I had optimism for the team coming into the year. I liked it. I never imagined that it would be this good. And now we're seeing DVOA after 4 weeks is like record high on trajectory, similar to Baltimore last year. It's very impressive what they've got going on.
I mean, we liked him too, Connor. I didn't think we thought this was in the range of outcomes, especially in the early part of the schedule. We're like, these are the tougher games, right? The Niners, the Texans on the road in the division against the Packers. Really impressive start. Expand on the Vikings or anything that surprised you in week 4.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add there. I think that's definitely been the most surprising. I think there was a lot of questions about Darnold coming in. Like, could he execute everything? He's done more than execute. He's facilitated. He's been efficient. Yet they haven't even been pushed yet. I'm really excited to watch a game where they're pushed and see, like, hey, what does that look like? Sam Darnold and the Vikings playing from behind. Can he not turn the ball over? Can he not turn into, a cupcake? Like, I think that's it, what I'm excited to see. And I think the only question that I have remaining right now, it's like Brian Flores put on a defensive masterclass after 4 weeks, just been changing things up, dialing up pressure. Like, they're far outperforming the talent they have on the field consistently for the last 2 years. And this year's just even more accentuated by who they've played. So I thought that was awesome. And then my most surprising thing here for week 4 would be, I would say the Bills laying an egg, like offensively. I really thought that they would have a lot more success passing the ball. I mean, they had a couple of close, like, non-conversions. Obviously Keon Coleman dropped the ball early in the first half. They didn't really open things up till the third quarter. I mean, Josh Allen had just 40 passing yards in the first half. Third quarter looked a little bit better. But still, it didn't come all together, and he didn't complete a single pass in the fourth quarter because he was benched after the first drive. So it's one of those things that things got away from them. Their defense didn't play well, and it was, just over way quicker than I thought it would be. And I was someone on the Bills last week, unfortunately. But it was just interesting to me. I thought that they would have some more answers to what the Ravens were doing, and they did not.
Yeah, same. I was holding the Ravens back or the Bills back there a little bit as well, and definitely needed that. And this is will lead into one of the games we're going to talk about here too. One of the things that surprised me, I think that if you just didn't watch the game at all, I think the Jets Broncos, the marriage between box score and results, it's probably one of the strangest that I can remember in the history of time. Like it's just such a bizarre outcome, right? I mean, you just say any scenario where like, all right, this team is going to be completely limited offensively. You're gonna have one receiver who basically accounts for all the yards. It's going to be 60 yards passing, and the team is going to win. Is just a really bizarre scenario. And a tough one for the Jets. And, again, I guess we'll get into Jets Vikings. That's one of the games here at the top. And just also kind of want to talk about the Broncos later too. I'm so concerned. Some of our concerns or how we thought this team was going to be it's kind of flip-flopped in a way, which is just absolutely strange as well. So I don't know what to make of the Jets. I'll kind of flip that over to Adam. I mean, what are your thoughts on what's going on there? There's obviously a lot of talk with Davante Adams. Is that the answer? Are they the team to land him? What are your kind of takeaways on how the Jets are going? I know you're a fan, but I know you do a great job at separating fandom from handicapping.
Do you want to go team specific or kind of in this matchup specific towards
Go team specific Jets. We'll get to the game.
So we're seeing what happens when an offense is entirely dependent on the performance of a quarterback and specifically his ability to make plays to throw guys open. There's nothing that is coming easy for the Jets offense. And what we're seeing is just a complete reliance on Rodgers managing things at the line of scrimmage and then trying to make things work, as well as what we're seeing is how easy it is to bracket or take Wilson out of the game. I think coming into the year, there is an expectation that Wilson would take over games and be the standout wide receiver. But when you don't have strong number 2 and number 3 pieces, when an offense operates this slowly and is this limited otherwise, it's really easy to kind of focus on one guy with double teams and brackets and take him out of the game. And then you're left with an offense that, quite frankly, doesn't have a lot of explosive playability. And so when you have that reliance on Rodgers, but then the offensive line isn't getting good push in the run game, they're just operating so slowly and so tightly that now defenses like Denver really good at timing the snap because the play clock is getting down so low every single time. There's not a lot of room for error. And whether it was the weather, a really good Broncos defense, the blitz, a combination of all of it, we saw what it looks like when Rodgers isn't on against the Broncos, and we saw what it's like when he is on against the Pats. And there's really no in between because it just is so reliant on Rodgers in this offense.
Yeah, what's interesting there, Connor, is it's not much different last year, right? I mean, Zach Wilson was able to feed and make Garrett Wilson the guy. Bruce Hall was able to find holes and it'd be explosive, right? The secondary pieces are better. The offensive line is better theoretically, right? It's just this. I feel like it's almost like now that Rodgers is here, Nathaniel Hackett is just like, well, go for it. Like he said, maybe he has even less involvement in what's going on. And Adam's point that Rodgers takes the clock down so predictably down to the last 3 seconds all the time. It's easier for teams to kind of feast on him.
Yeah, I think Adam brought it up too with this Denver defense. I thought this is leading to this result here. Like, I mean, they allowed 29 points in their last 3 games combined. They're 3rd in EPA, 4th in success rate, 5th in success rate versus run, 9th versus pass. Like, they're playing really, really well. And so I think that partially has something to do with it. And then on the other hand, like, yeah, there's no easy buttons. There's, Nathaniel Hackett is one of the worst OCs in the league. That's not a surprise. And then things just aren't clicking for Rodgers /Garrett Wilson at this point because, again, they're bracketing him. They're making things tough on like getting the ball to him, which is a major problem when your other receivers are a guy like Mike Williams who's coming back from an injury. And then Allen Lazard is like your other chain moving option. So, and then they don't have any explosive options. I mean, they don't have a guy who like can stretch the field at all really. So I think there's a lot of issues there. And then if they're not running the ball well on first and down, second down, which they're not, they're behind the stick. So they're just like always in trouble. And so that's kind of the biggest issues. I think that in easier matchups, things will sort themselves out a little bit more and they'll figure it out. So I think there are better days to come. We'll talk about it here in a second. Not sure that's this week.
I was about
that's
to
the problem, right? This is supposed to be the softer part of the schedule as well, though, because it does fatten up a little bit later too, right? So they're supposed to be picking off some of these games. I mean, it's definitely a spot they had earmarked for a win if you're kind of handicapping the early season futures or anything like that on the Jets side. It's a little bit of a tougher one to take last week. So where does Adams go, Connor? Clearly seems like he has played his last game with the Raiders, it feels like.
I think Jets or Saints. Pretty Ricky came back for a total of 15 minutes. I don't know if you just saw that on Twitter.
I did not.
Pretty Ricky undeleted his account, said, I'm back, tweeted out that it's Jets or Saints, and then re-deleted his account. Also, another guy who has connections with Adams said that it was like he gave 2 extra teams on top of the Jets and Saints, but one of them I'm not really buying, and so I think probably one of those teams.
Didn't see that message. I think I know who that is, but that's a good source for sure. Adam, any thoughts on where Davante lands?
The Jets, they have to make it work. Everyone's job is on the line. It's the hot seat. I mean, the Jets own 2nd and 3rd rounds next year, 2nd round 2 years from now. It sounds like the going price is the third, based on what was being kicked around on Twitter last night and this morning. They got to make a move for him. You put Adams in that offense, that's a significant upgrade to what they're going to be able to free up. We're talking about Wilson being bracketed and stuck. You got to make the play for it. I don't know what else. The team hasn't made the playoffs since 2010, January 2011, the last time they played a playoff game. But if you're not doing it now, then what? And it's a team that is in such a dire position that you can afford to hemorrhage a bit of the future here. You already did it with the QB. Get Reddick out. You've got the cap space to do it. They're about $3 million over. If they're able to move him or he doesn't come back and that frees things up, got to do it.
Feels like that's got to be the move. Like if you need to pay a second, just figure it out. Like you just need, you're all in on this. You're all in the front office has got to be all in. You've tied yourself to Rodgers. Like, why would you not take?
I can't imagine if they don't make the move being content, basically going out like this. Like if the Jets don't make the playoffs this year, everyone's cleaned out. I mean, there's no way to come back from this, especially if it gets ugly. You're already tied into it. Just make the move. Honestly, it's surprising that it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Chiefs Commanders also would make sense theoretically, but you feel like the Jets should be willing to spend the most. Commanders are interesting. Jake's got a question in the chat here for Adam. Thoughts on Jane Daniels' start? Obviously, and he kind of notes it here again. Like Connor decided to put his neck out there. Unfortunately, the other day, just a measured take. And again, this is a fan base not quite as desperate maybe as the Jets, but like, man, the Commanders and the Redskins and the football team has been down bad for a very long time. They are desperate for anything, and I get it. But you have to have a little bit of context, I think, in what we do to kind of look at who they've played and who they've beat up on. And good for them. You want to beat up on the softies, Adam, but there's no way around it. They've beat up on the softies, right? They haven't had really much of anything in terms of difficult schedule, in terms of teams testing them, especially defensively.
Was that the schedule-based tweet you sent out, Connor?
Yeah, I said it was something like
Jane
Daniels played awesome, but he's also played bad teams. Like I feel like that's a fair take, and I got blasted. Like I muted the tweet because I was like, I just don't want to ruin my day arguing.
Mute conversation. Yeah, I've checked that a few times myself this year. I'm here yet.
What do you think? I mean, was that a crazy take or no? I mean, he has played really well. I'm not going to lie. He's played well.
No, it's not a crazy take. The way I always look at it, you cannot control who you play in the NFL. You can control how you play against them. And there's two sides to this I think are fair. The one that you mentioned is they played a very soft schedule of opposing defenses. And the Bengals will probably be the team that stands out as like, well, how can you say the Bengals defense is soft? The market's telling you all you need to know about the Bengals defense right now in a game that's been bet up 4 points into the 50s this week. A number that we don't see totals in the 50 that often anymore. And there was zero hesitation for that game being bet up. They have two big defensive line injuries, haven't been able to stop anybody on the ground. That's a very bad Bengals defense. And then in terms of the Cardinals and the Giants, whether you look at roster ratings pre-year, whether you look at what's happened so far through 4 weeks, those are two very bad secondaries. And so on one hand, it's a very soft schedule. On the other, when you punt 2 times in 3 games or 1 time in 3 games, whatever it is at this point, like that's a damn good performance and you're overperforming expectation. I think both are fair. I'm curious with the variance that comes with a rookie quarterback when this settles. But a couple things that I would say, if you're a Commanders fan, is one, Cliff Kingsbury, his entire career has been superior to competition in September. Every month after, his offenses in success rate and yards per play have gone down. So to see a Kingsbury offense get really hot in September is nothing new. I think the big question is, did he learn enough going back to college to where this is going to be different? I think we saw a lot of 2 tight end sets against Arizona. He showed some willingness to adapt. He hasn't in the years past. Maybe that's a positive. The other thing that I would say that is maybe a little bit concerning, Daniels and the Commanders offense have been awesome on 3rd down. And that's typically not something that is predictive of future success because it's a high leverage down and they've got away with a lot on 3rd down. And so not only is the not punting going to come back down to earth, what do you get when you come back down to earth on 3rd down as well? The Commanders have 1 turnover on offense in 4 games. That's something that's very rare and unique as well. And I think Aaron Schatz today said it pretty well when he's like, when you look at the EPA per play versus DVOA per so far through 4 weeks, and the difference between the two, the Commanders are really outperforming their DVOA level and EPA per play, because when Daniels threw the interception, it was returned for 0 gain. They've recovered every fumble they've had. On first down, they've generated a lot of explosive plays, and DVOA credits those a little bit differently. And so everything has been going right. It's been awesome. I just wonder if the team is closer to what we saw in week 1, where they couldn't complete a pass to a wide receiver, or are they just so much variance driven with this rookie QB that they're closer to what we've seen the last 3 weeks? I think there's a lot of questions around it. I have a really hard time figuring out where the floor or the ceiling is.
Yeah. If you're a fan, put on your hog nose, lean into it, all that stuff.
Fans haven't had a reason to be happy.
Yeah.
And it's like the Jets. When's the last time they've been happy about anything? I resonate with it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, raise the RG3 Alfred Morris years briefly, right? Like a couple of good early Kirk Cousin years. I mean, it's really it, right? It's been, and even that wasn't
like
that great,
2015,
right?
I guess, by now.
Yeah. It's been dark. So good for them. You're a fan. And, Jake is, lean into that a little bit there too, take it in and enjoy it. It's been quite the ride. Gets a little harder this week.
I know from Jake, like, he's got an Oilers picture in the avatar. How does he go from Oilers fans to Commanders fan? That's as far as it gets geographically.
That's a big one. Yeah. Jake is fantastic intern, Jake, for us, expanding his role. He's been great for us. So I know we know he's a Commanders fanboy.
He did ask me another question here, Adam. You don't have to comment on this, but I noticed the other day on Twitter that your plays are now being tracked by GRP. Any comments, thoughts about this with the notebook?
I honestly, I haven't looked at a thing that he has said in 2+ years. It's been going on for a long time. I know nothing about the guy. I don't know. It's not that I don't have a comment. I have no idea who the guy is. And so it's not necessarily something.
Well, I found it funny because it's the way it was presented was it seemed like you guys were teaming up or something like that. And I was like, well, that seems like an odd arrangement. So
what was the criticism, or like what is being put out there now?
No criticism. It was just that he's recording your plays in his notebook. I think that was as far as
you got your own sheet in the notebook. It sounds like I didn't see this either, but that sounds.
We have everything publicly tracked on the site as well as through Bet.
Yeah, but if it's not in the notebook, Adam, it doesn't count.
I'm not too sure there, but that's I don't know.
No, yeah,
well, he's tracking last week. What was you guys like 5-0 or 4-0, something like that? You guys were perfect last week, so pretty good notebook start for you guys.
I guess so.
Week. Yeah, good for you as a character. Connor, last one, we'll get into the games. Who picks first in the draft? Starts today. First pick, 2025 NFL draft. Are on the clock.
I'm going to go with the Patriots. I mean, they just keep losing guys. Like any talent they have is just going downhill. Lost their starting center, I believe, for probably the rest of the season. And I mean, that was their running game. The only time they were winning was when they're running the ball successfully and playing some good defense. If anything's failing, if they're put behind the sticks, they have to throw the ball. It's just basically a complete disaster. So I'm going to go with the Patriots. Long shot, Raiders. I mean, what we talked about preseason, if it falling apart, I mean, they still won against the Browns. I just think that those seem like an overperformance in my mind. But I don't know. Devontae gets traded. Crosby a little bit banged up. I think the floor here is still really low for this Raiders team.
Yeah, lost that 85-yard Amari Cooper touchdown in the fourth quarter. We got called back for holding. So that was
terrible.
Tough one. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I think the Patriots comment is right. Like, they've lost now multiple captains on defense. I'm not sure what the status of Duggar is. That seems like an ongoing scenario. And you mentioned losing Andrews on the O-line. It's one of the rare times you get the injury tweet, and then you get like the subsequent how important this guy is to everything tweet. And he's one of those players. And what I found curious was they didn't go out of their way. They even went out of their way in the press conference to say, we're not pursuing replacements. I'm not too sure what to make of that. But so I think the Pats are right. That's an interesting comment on the Raiders. I honestly, last week maybe gives me hesitation because I thought last week was the beginning of the slide for Pierce. Yep. Like interim head coaches promoted the next year. typically really struggle. And once you see both guys, Crosby and Adams, with injuries late and the concerns and the business decision, I'm like, okay, here it goes. The fact they won against the Browns maybe gives a little bit of optimism there that they're not completely done and we're not seeing the room lost. But I still could see the Raiders situation going south in a hurry. So
Yeah,
I think
I thought
that's a
that
good call there.
game had more to do with the Browns' dysfunction than the Raiders.
Well, that's part of it too, right? And so then you put Cleveland in this conversation ever, or is the roster too good to sustain it?
It's probably too good, but it's the quarterback situation so bleak, right? I mean, like it's rough. I mean,
what would they have been last year without Flacco? I was thinking about this in context of the Colts, because like QB play last year was like guy was 47th with DTR. You had another guy that was like 48th.
Dobbs,
and then you have Watson. They could have been really bad if Flacco didn't save them.
Yeah, and they get the doors blown off in the playoff game too. I mean, sometimes you can, because of the way that Garrett and Zadarius Smith, kind of the way that they use their edges, more so than a lot of other teams, they are really just kind of pin their ears back, get to the quarterback guys, and teams can run on the edge at times against Cleveland. You do see them give up for a team that can like sometimes have some pretty good defensive metrics against the run. They give up a pretty high rate of explosives at times. And I think the Raiders were able to take advantage of that surprisingly a little bit last week after having like almost historical ineptitude on the ground through the first month of the season. It was last week they showed a little bit of a pulse. Gets harder again this week. I mean, the Broncos run defense has been awesome. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens there. Maybe O'Connor's long shot into the season, I think, has a little bit more life, especially if there are longer sustained missing time wise. We didn't have Max Crosby play today. Again, it feels like the Devontae Adams thing is inevitable. What's that look like in the locker room? All those different things. So Pats have to be the favorite, though. I would think the schedule is still pretty tough moving forward. So they got to be the favorite.
FanDuel has odds. Just real quick: Patriots, Panthers, Jags, Giants, Titans. Then Browns are plus 950. I mean, the market is an insane amount of holding in. I mean, it's like one of those like
What are the Raiders?
21-1. I think that's worth a little bit.
Yeah, give me a little there. That's a good call. Because realistically, what was last year? 2 wins got the first pick, or was it 3?
No, it's 2.
So there's about 8 or 9 teams with 1 or 0 so far. Raiders finishing with 4 isn't like crazy, is it?
I don't think so. I think this year could be a little different too. I mean, the Pats have already won a game, so like they could end up with like 3 or 4. Like I think 3 or 4 probably. I think 4 probably does it this year, to be honest. So
yeah,
or at least puts them in the mix.
You think about that. If we end up thinking that the Ravens are legit title contender, and the one Raiders win was on the road in Baltimore. It's kind of crazy looking back on what that might look like in December. So. All right, let's jump into some of the games here on the Week 5 slate. We will start with the game in London. First of the London games. Get your body ready. Get up, get that coffee going early, especially the West Coasters like Adam here. You got your Jets neutral game against the Vikings here. Interesting line movement, as actually referenced in the chat here too by Chris. Curious of this. Again, neutral field line movement. This was Jets 1.5 point favorites in the look-ahead window. It's hard not to continue to have pro-Vikings sentiment in the market. Again, another strong performance on the road in the division. But we are now moving significantly here. Basically almost 2.5, 3 points here on the Minnesota side. Adam, what are your thoughts on Jets-Vikings?
So to answer Chris's question, if this was being recorded maybe any other week in any other season, I would say yes. And I would say that like the 3 spots this week would be Jets, Jags, and Browns. And what this week has turned into my lowest volume betting week of the season internally as our group. It's our lowest output as well. And we've only released 1 game too. It's turned out to be a really tough week. So I know exactly what Chris is saying here. The problem that I have with this is 2 things. The first, I've noticed, I don't know what the right word to call it is, but I've noticed a lot of doubles in terms of game plans and opposing matchups so far this season. So, for example, the Brian Flores defense for Minnesota faced the 49ers, and then they faced the Houston Texans. And you have coordinators directly from the same system and then the real system both times. And the Vikings defense looked good the first time. Second time around, they looked awesome. We saw the Patriots play the Jets and the 49ers. Jets and 49ers defense, same scheme, same system. Pats looked bad. The first game looked really bad. The second game. And for the Jets, even though this isn't exactly that same scenario, when I think about the Denver Broncos, they lead the league in blitz rate through 4 weeks, blitz more than any other team. That gave the Jets offense a ton of problems. Some of it was the weather for sure, but the Jets just had no answer for the blitz, and the O-line was struggling. The cadence was off. The offense looked really bad. And now they play a Vikings defense with Brian Flores. Last year, he led the league in blitz rate. He's number 2 this year. So I'm putting myself in Brian Flores' position with this defense that's at a historic DVOA level through 4 weeks, that's playing exceptional football. It's like, how do you not take away from that game plan last week that the Broncos used and apply it this week, which I certainly think they can? The Jets, to navigate that, are going to have to play a lot of up-tempo, like we saw the Packers do in the second and third quarter in their comeback when they looked really good to offset it. I don't know if the Jets are capable of doing that the way that they're operating and want to operate. And so I'm really stuck here because on one hand, on a neutral game to move this much, it's a lot. But on the other hand, like, there's a lot of negatives here for the Jets in the matchup to give me some concern. And so I don't really know what to do with this game, but I haven't bet the side of the total.
That's my handicap, Connor. I don't have much to add. It was kind of that same angle with the way the Broncos played and the pressure rate for sure. I mean, I couldn't find a pressure to sack rate for Aaron Rodgers higher than what he currently has. It's a small 4-game sample, but he's north of 25%. That is not really where he's been historically. He's been in the teens. Seems like a guy that is just not really willing to fight into tight windows. It's kind of never been his thing, right? He'd love to, people would dog him in the past where he'd love to throw the ball in the stands versus take a shot deep down the field. He wanted to keep that really clean touchdown to interception ratio going. Just seems like a guy that's very content to tuck and protect himself, especially last week against a ton of pressure. So 14 pressures last week. I feel like the Vikings have a ton of success getting pressure here again. 2.5 feels like a big move, but just from a matchup standpoint, it feels like kind of the right side. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and my angle is on the other side of the ball here. This Jets defense right now is 27th in rushing success rate, 3rd in passing success rate. Their pass defense is still played awesome. But the key here is, like we saw in week 1, right? Like the Niners ran all over the Jets, but when they did pass the ball, we saw Brock Purdy, 65% completion rate, 230 pass yards, did have some success, but that was just because the Jets had to overcommit to the run because they're like, we can't just keep hemorrhaging, 5-6 yards a pop here. And that left their pass defense with some problems. And I think that when we look at this Vikings team here, how they match up against the Jets, you have Justin Jefferson who can go into the slot. You have Jordan Addison who moves in the slot. Like all these guys have none of them play out wide more than 65% of the time, which is an issue because the Jets are predominantly stronger out wide with Sauce, with DJ Reed on the outside. So I think that the Vikings could have some offensive success here with like a run heavy plan and then probably some stuff towards the middle of the field. And that gives me issues again with backing the Jets for all the reasons offensively that you mentioned. And then on the other side, like defensively, yes, I still think their pass defense is awesome, but stylistically and how they match up, I just have some concerns there as well.
To put some numbers in perspective here, to Chris's point and what we're talking about, like preseason, my numbers made this game Jets -4.5 on the neutral. There's another model we source that is very well respected. They made it Jets -4. And then we have the common opponent in the 49ers that both teams have played. And there was the Jets were rated about 4 points better in those matchups. And so to get now the Vikings 2.5 on the other side, like this is a big swing, but like you mentioned, Connor, it could be justified.
Yeah, pretty significant for sure. I mean, they're not blitzing as much as they were last year, but they are lapping the field in actual pressures. They have 19 more than Tampa Bay, who was in second place with 58 total pressures. The Vikings have 77 pressures. They pressured Jordan Love. Again, PFF has whatever you think of PFF grades. PFF has the Packers as the best pass blocking offensive line in the league. They pressured Jordan Love 21 times last week. Now, again, that gets a little bit easier when the game flips and it becomes really clear what the Packers need to do to move the football. Still, they got home. They get home from the second level. It's not just their guys up front. There are going to be a lot of ways that they can take advantage of this Jets offensive line.
One more thing I'm going to add. The fact the Vikings get a bye and the Jets don't is weird to me. I don't get that. It feels like the Vikings have more liberty to push a little bit in this game with the bye on deck than the Jets, who have to come home and play the Bills on Monday night. It's just, that's a weird the Jets haven't been given any favors scheduled timing wise, but with the fact one team gets it and one doesn't, it doesn't feel right to me.
That's interesting. I believe, and I could be wrong, I think the teams have the option, right? They like want to give you the bye coming out of a travel overseas game, but teams over the years, like some teams didn't want it. So it sounds like I would believe the Jets have chosen to not have that situation, right? And to come out of it and to go to Buffalo is a pretty tough spot.
Yeah, but it sounds like a Jets coaching decision right there. As
another one. Another one.
That would be the most Jets decision ever to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Let's get Buffalo after that travel. Yeah, for sure. All right, next, we touched on this one a little bit earlier. Baltimore is on the road, and Cincinnati. This is another one where we've seen some line movement here. We are basically out across the board at 2.5. It's a little juicy, so moving towards 3 in some spots total. 50.5, as Adam touched on as well, pretty high. I think the injury report's going to matter quite a bit here, specifically on the Cincinnati side. Trey Hendrickson is a big one. Painful stinger is how it was described today. We don't know his status. He matters. I'm not even sure it matters in terms of what he does and how he impacts a football game. Because he's another one of these kind of rush only edges. He's not a great run stopping guy. And this interior defensive line with BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins for Cincinnati is a problem. They both sat last week. I believe they both did not practice today. I don't know their status. It is really hard to just kind of compete against a Baltimore team that is really efficient running the football, is very comfortable just saying, hey, we're going to drop back 18 times and make you stop the run. And Cincinnati cannot do that. Connor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it almost makes me think that we're going to see them do like kind of what they did a little bit against Washington when they had Brian Robinson in. And that was just like try everything possible to stop the run, and just make Lamar beat him through the air. If they can't stop the run, I mean, the game's over before it starts in a sense. In terms of defense, on the defensive side of the ball, if they can't stop Derrick Henry, I have a really hard time seeing them stay in this game. But maybe they don't have the personnel. I truly don't know how that's possible, how to stop the run given their personnel at this point. But, I believe that Lou Anarumo can figure that out and force Lamar to beat them. I think that's in my mind, the only path that this game does not go crazy in terms of points. Admittedly, I'm having a tough time with this one, though, because I do think that Cincinnati should have some success on their own end, passing the ball here against the Ravens team that played really well last week and has played well the last 2 weeks, especially in the first 3 quarters, defensively, pass defense-wise. But I still think that Cincinnati should be able to pass the ball against them a little bit with Burrow at full health, with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins working back, Yoshi Voss, Eric All's working in. When things are clicking, I don't really think that any matchup is too much for them, specifically offensively. So it's for me, it's kind of just a stay away because I go back and forth. Am I excited to run and bet an over total on 50.5? No, but I do think that Cincinnati, if they can find a way to force Baltimore's hand to pass the ball a little bit more, Baltimore will just have to pass and probably still have success. It'll just look a little bit different.
It's kind of my notes too. I think that this is, if you like Cincinnati, I think it's probably an over game, even though we're at 50.5. We're on the right side of a key number. Again, feels like Adam said, we don't get a lot of totals up here. But again, if Cincinnati has a pulse offensively, they've actually done a really good job at protecting Burrow so far this year. And we know the Ravens did a better job last week against Josh Allen, but they are not the dynamic pass rushing unit that they were last year under Mike McDonald. They have stepped back there a little bit. And I do feel like too, when Baltimore has to be pushed a little bit, it's just a better version of Baltimore than when they just kind of have to maintain a lead and they just kind of play with their food a little bit. That's when other teams come back into it. So, Adam, what are your thoughts here at 2.5?
Waiting. Let's see if 3 hits. At 3, it's probably a tougher decision to pass on Cincinnati. You just think about the spot. The Ravens off of a win that I would classify as a very 1-of-1 win. That was such a perfect matchup for what the Ravens do offensively against the Bills defense that is so weak in the spine right now with injuries. That was just a tailor-made 1-of-1 matchup for the Ravens to go against. And like you're saying, the Bengals aren't much better equipped to handle it than than we saw last week with the Bills. So Hill, Rankins, Hendrickson, you got to have those guys out there. We don't know what the report's going to look like. You get those guys starting to go down, this number's going to get to the full 3. With saying that, the Bengals offense, I think maybe is a touch underrated. as we progress. Like you mentioned, it's getting better. We're seeing improvement every week. Higgins back matters. Chase is getting close to 100%. You now have multiple tight ends to work with. Brown is emerging as the more explosive back, and he's getting some usage. There's a lot of things to like about the Bengals offense. And to me, the Ravens are a little bit beefed up and inflated off of that Bills win that probably made them look better than they actually are because of the matchup. So I'm waiting this one out. It would be hard for me to ever justify betting the Ravens if it were to get to 3, and I'd be far more intrigued with the Bengals. I hate to be waffling back and forth here. It's a really tough week, but I could only be Bengals and the points if it gets to 3, and that's kind of what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, on paper, I mean, I've been carrying the Bengals water all off season, anti everything Baltimore, not to miss the playoffs, anything like that. And now I watch what we kind of saw last week, and I'm just like, oh man, I'm worried about them stopping the run here. Maybe Connor's right. Maybe they sell out. They just match up on the outside and try to sell out to stop the run and see if Lamar can beat you. But again, that's when I think points start to come into play. So injury report matters. I think we should all hold off until we get a little bit more clarity there.
There's I'll say one thing, like it's a very big difference between like good Baltimore and good matchups versus Baltimore in not clicking 100%, similar to the Jets. Like if you get a great offensive game out of Baltimore where they're going downhill and attacking linebackers, nobody's stopping them. But we've seen, like point out the Raiders game. That was 2 games ago. And I mean, that's a very different Baltimore team than what we saw against the Bills. So there's a lot of variance in Ravens games offensively. Yeah,
that's a good call for sure. All right, next we have just touching on Buffalo too. Professionals here, just transitioning game to game. Buffalo on the road in Houston. Some early action here. Buffalo is 1.5 in the market. 1.5 is -102 on FanDuel. If you're shopping there, 47.5 is the total pretty much across the board. Again, some Buffalo love in the market here a little bit. This was Houston -1 in the look aheads and when we reopened, and now we're sitting a little short on the Buffalo side. So again, not massive movement, but through the zero, to another team being favored is at least notable. Again, the spine of the Buffalo defense took another hit. Taylor Rapp, concussion, their strong safety. He's lost. Von Miller lost to a suspension. Von Miller was dust last year. He's been really, really impactful this year on a limited stat basis. They lose him for 4 games of the suspension. That one matters quite a bit too. Injuries on the Texans side that I think matter too in terms of how we would handicap this. Larry Tunsil dealing with, I think, multiple ankle injuries. He left early against the Jags with an ankle injury.
Ankles are big enough to have multiple when you're looking.
I think just 2.
He's walking around the field these days. It is.
I think just 2 ankle injuries. I know I said multiple. Just want to. It's not 3. It's just got 2.
Maybe 3. You never know.
Maybe 3. Tank Dell as well. We need to know if he's active. What's going on in the running back room here, Adam? Thoughts on Buffalo and Houston?
I've been asked about this game twice today, and I unfortunately don't have a good answer. What I can say is I've seen 2 groups with orders on either side betting each team +1. So when you have a game that's lined where it is and you have disagreement at +1 on either side, it kind of tells you all you need to know in the market. And we're seeing this kind of stuck in that point. I don't have, honestly, a whole lot to add. I will say, if I'm looking at Houston last week, I thought it was impressive. It was Stroud's best game against a man coverage defense that we've seen in his entire career. Typically, he's a quarterback that thrives when facing zone coverage. You're going to get a lot of that from the Bills, especially with some of the injuries they have now. I would think that this is a pretty good looking game from Stroud. I question whether or not the Texans can effectively attack that spine of the Bills defense. They're a team that's most likely trying to get out wide, which is into the strength of the Bills defense that we saw the Jags try to do and got nothing. But this is a much better Texans defense than what we saw. And so every number that I'm looking at makes this within a point either way. There's not a big edge numbers wise. I don't see anything crazy from the matchup perspective. I just don't have a lot to go off here. I think it's a good line. I think it's a good number.
This is one, if you're just football fans, we weren't betting on it or handicapping, and it'd just be like, oh, it's just can't wait to watch this game on Sunday, Connor. But that's not our lot in life. We're here to handicap football games. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, but see, I have a lot of the same issues here, especially with this Houston offense. You think, oh, well, Buffalo, 23rd in rushing success rate, just got absolutely pounded on the ground, lost multiple players. I mean, Joe Mixon isn't playing.
No
Cam
Mixon.
Akers, Yeah, like, I mean, Mixon still didn't practice today as we're recording on a Wednesday. He hasn't played in multiple weeks. I mean, they're trotting out Cam Akers. Even if they get Dameon Pierce back, like these guys are irrelevant. They're really bad. And if the offensive line is beat up at all, like they're not going to be able to execute in that way. So it's going to be a lot of pressure on Stroud and this offense to move the ball that way. And then Buffalo, on the other hand, it's interesting because Houston's run defense last season was really strong, and their pass defense played pretty well too. They haven't played as well this season, and their run defense particularly has not played as well. And that's, could be interesting here because I think Buffalo, after they went to Baltimore, tried a pass heavy approach, didn't really work. I mean, we saw for whatever, like 10 of the 12 games that Joe Brady's been OC, they've wanted to be a run heavy team and be like, all right, we'll run a lot. And then we can go pass heavy in certain situations, which we saw in the Jaguars game, which we saw them try to do in the Baltimore game. And I think still could have gotten different results had things gone better. But, I think that like this, they could go back to their run heavy approach here if they're finding success. So I go back and forth. I love both these teams. Like I've been trying to be like at or above market on basically these teams in virtually every other matchup. So for me, it's a stay away, but there definitely will be some props. I like the zone call out there, maybe some Stephon Diggs stuff, maybe some Tank Dell stuff. Curious about his availability there, but some Diggs receptions sound pretty tasty right now.
I think Dell will play based on how it came out today. It sounds like he's much closer than Mixon, but I agree. If you don't have Mixon out there, like I don't know what the path is.
It's a path. It opens up a path for our guy Monotone in some props. I think something we've seen him want to go down the line. I think it's a nice spot for. Yeah, I think we see that again here, especially after what we just saw Justice Hill do to this pass defense as well, or this Bills defense. Going to be a good football game. All right, last one we'll talk about here is the Monday nighter. We have the Saints on the road against the Chiefs. We are looking across the board 5.5, total 43.5. I mean, just obviously a tough. Chiefs are just a bizarre team. They were a bizarre team at this time last year, and none of it mattered in the end. The Saints seem to get away from a little bit of what was working early in the season, Adam. A lot of play action early, very, very little last week against the Falcons. I'm curious to your thoughts on what's going on with this team or this game 5.5 on the Chiefs.
The Eagles spooked them, I think, and you lose your center and McCoy, and that's significant. And Ruiz at right guard is down. It's an O-line that had questions coming into the year, but I think Fangio really kind of shook them up a bit with that 6-man front he showed. Carr is a completely different quarterback when he's facing consistent pressure than when he's kept clean. So I think that spooked them. I think about what the Eagles did. I can't help but think the Chiefs are going to do one better with Spags coming into this game. Everything for Kansas City is now on the defense. And so to me, the Chiefs defense at home is going to be the unit that dominates this game. I think the Chiefs win and cover 5.5 at home. I look at the Chiefs offense as a unit that's now going to transition away perhaps from what we've seen the first couple of weeks, go a lot more 2 tight end sets, mix in some 3 tight end sets. Hunt, I thought, looked really good. There's maybe some injury concern that limited him in past weeks prior to coming back to Kansas City. Looking back last year, I think he's a different running back, closer to the Hunt that we knew from years prior. I thought he was a really nice pickup and a really nice add. So I think he's going to be featured a little bit more than Steele. If the Chiefs go to heavier personnel, it's really going to free up Mahomes in the pocket, who's been surprisingly antsy. He just hasn't looked comfortable. There's been some tackle mistrust so far this year. And even Tooney on the offensive line in the interior hasn't looked himself either. So yeah, getting Mahomes a little bit more comfortable. I think multiple tight ends, you get some backs involved. I think the Chiefs throw a nice little curveball into this game as they evolve into a new offense they're going to be forced into. And I wonder, Saints-wise, if the Chiefs get a break and Demario Davis misses another game, that middle of the field is going to be wide open for Kansas City. So every number that we had preseason in this game was above 8. Other models we source had it above 8 as well. This is a pretty different world for pricing that we're getting into at 5.5 that I don't agree with. So I like the Chiefs here.
Yeah. In the look ahead window as well, Connor. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah. Chris Jones versus the Saints interior is biggest mismatch of the week, I think, across all units. Like literally what Adam said, like we saw as soon as they lost McCoy against the Eagles, like it was like anytime they were in a play action, like Jalen Carter was like 4 yards deep into their backfield. Like, like literally it was just Carr was getting eaten alive on a play-to-play basis. And I mean, I just worry about the same thing. I think they're going to try and stop the run, force the Saints to pass, and it's just not going to be pretty here. So, and then if we look at the other side of the ball here with the Chiefs on the offense, like Travis Kelce was not relied upon as that short to intermediate guy in the first 3 weeks of the season. I don't know if he has a ton of juice, but I think that he can still operate in that capacity without Rashee Rice. And so it's not quite the same extent, but like chain moving, again, like plays, I think that he can execute. And then they just need Xavier Worthy to take a step forward. They have Juju, who's played a little bit better. I think he can kind of, work at some intermediate areas. Justin Watson can stretch the field. It's a lot of guys that they relied upon last year that like, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't always great, but they found a way to get the job done. They kind of found some rhythm there. They're obviously devoid of talent mostly at this point, but they're getting the job done. And I think that in this spot here, like as long as Kelce can do anything in like the short to intermediate area, I think the rest could come through here with Worthy being, I guess, another super talented player in terms of just like explosiveness and like stretching the field, which they didn't have last year.
Keep going. I need some confirmation bias here. It's a tough week 5. Keep going
with
the
Honey Badger. Honey Badger might be out. Multiple injuries, dealing with a heel injury. Came back last week, left early again. So Honey Badger's been playing well. That could be impactful over the middle of the field too. So there you go.
Do you guys subscribe to the night game Arrowhead drops conspiracy / historic stat line? Are you into that?
You got to fill me in on this. I don't know if I even said.
Well, you got to take MVS out of the sample, and then like, what does that look like? Because MVS,
so it goes back prior to MVS. I think it. I want to say the sample started in 2015. So maybe it was dated to like when Mahomes started. More drops at Arrowhead during night games than any other stadium, any other conditions, any other time of day, and it's above. I want to say it's above 12%, and then no other stadium at any time is above 6%. And the rationale is the night plus the lights plus the red background of the stands and the boards that go around the stadium make it difficult to see the football, especially so for teams coming in that don't play in it often. And we see you think back to some of the biggest drops in Chiefs games, even in week 1, lots of drops. So. Yeah. It's becoming a little bit more talked about, but we'll see it in full swing here Monday night.
More confirmation bias. I had like Carr under passing yards kind of circled, as just like a potential option. It's just maybe completions now. Who knows? We'll see what it ends up being.
Yeah, no, I like it's another one that's a big move, and I think an overreaction at 5.5. So you got a good spot there, Adam, for sure. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Any other games that I know Adam highlighted that it's been a tough week and you guys haven't made any other plays there? Any other game you want to talk about before you take off?
I would say Chicago. So to be clear, we've bet and released one game all week, and that was the Chiefs. We were very close on Chicago at 3.5 minus 120 was the price that we were looking at. Panthers defense really bad to begin with, but now just riddled with injuries. You lose middle linebacker 1 and 2. Bears really putting a focus on running the football. I think this is another matchup for a Bears offense that I see as improving week over week to have that outlet of a ground game against a weaker defensive opponent. Offensively for the Panthers, you don't have Adam Thielen. Deontay Johnson's going to play, but he's banged up. You have some injuries on the O-line. This was a game that we were looking at a couple weeks ago when the switch was made to Andy Dalton and we adjusted for everything in the numbers. We had it close to 7. It was like 6.8 something. So we were just shy of 7. The Raiders win comes. The Panthers prices come crashing down. The Bears just closed 3 against the Rams. And I have the Panthers a big step down from Andy Dalton. I have the Panthers a step down from Matthew Stafford and the Rams, even as bad as the Rams defense has been. And so a half points difference here from what we saw last week to where we are now against an equally bad defense. It's not quite enough for me. So at 3.5 minus 120, I'd like the Bears.
They had already lost Derrick Brown. They are Shaq Thompson been playing his best football. Josie Jewell's
out
this week.
You're potentially without your nose tackle, Shy Tuttle. You have just
Jordan
at
Fuller.
least 4 of the 7 starting defensive front 7 out.
Yeah.
So that's
and Jordan Fuller in the back half. I familiarized myself with linebackers, with rookie linebackers coming into the league, and there was probably no more stunning pick at the time than the Panthers reaching for Trevin Wallace in the third round when there are some other really good linebackers on the board. Trevin Wallace is going to be, I think, the every down linebacker. You'll probably see some other guys you've never heard of playing significant snaps for the Panthers at linebacker. Trevin Wallace allowed a 90.3% completion percentage last year at Kentucky. When you're dubbed a read and react prospect, that just means that you don't understand the position. You're just a really good athlete, and that's great at Kentucky. That does not bode well in the National Football League, and I think the Bears are in for again another nice spot for them to get some points this week. Because
can I ask you a linebacker question and steal some of your tackle prop expertise?
All the time, buddy.
What's going on with Atlanta with Anderson out? That guy gets a lot of tackles. Like who's coming up there? Because certainly the Bucs are going to run a bit with McMillan and who else are they out? They lost another Palmer.
Yeah, one of my lone winners last week, Adam, was over on Troy Anderson. And he
went over halftime, probably first quarter, no
halftime line. Yeah, yeah, that one felt good. So I felt good about the day, and then the day came crashing down soon after. But so they drafted J.D. Bertrand in the draft. He was the first guy up. It's not great. He was the first guy up last week because Nate Landman is on IR. What's been interesting Nate Landman going out, what they've done with Caden Ellis, and Caden Ellis was one of those guys last week against the Saints, and they did it again the week prior as well. They used almost Ellis as like an edge rusher, as an extra body along the offensive line. So really, if you were looking at the formation, it looked like Troy Anderson was the only linebacker on the field, kind of alone in the middle, and that's why he had an absolute field day there. So it's going to be Bertrand. They re-signed Rashaan Evans, who was one of their best linebackers in 2021, 2022, not that far back.
45 years old.
Yeah, old Rashaan Evans. But, he's dusty. He couldn't get on the field for the Cowboys last year. I don't know if he'll even be active. So it's probably going to be Caden Ellis and J.D. Bertrand, which is, a step down from, if you ever looked at the relative athletic score of Troy Anderson, he's like the Anthony Richardson of defense. Just the guy took him a little while to click and he couldn't stay healthy, but Troy Anderson is a freak athlete, and we kind of finally saw it click the last couple of weeks.
So when a guy like that goes out that gets so many tackles, is it an auto play for the guy coming in, or do you have to then assume that there's going to be a scheme shift because they're protecting the weaker link that's now on the field?
I think they're going to protect the weaker link. I don't think they do what they did with Caden Ellis. I think Caden Ellis has to play more traditional off-ball linebacker stuff, and they can't put him at edge because I don't think J.D. Bertrand can handle it by himself in the middle. So I think it is a scheme change for sure.
So then would Ellis over be consideration? Is he even priced?
Ellis over is probably, he's, I don't think it's hung. Well, maybe it's hung now because of we finally got the Anderson news. So it depends on what the number is. As you know, we're all market sensitive, but Ellis far less efficient of a tackler historically, even in his time in New Orleans, than what we've seen out of Troy Anderson in a small sample. J.D. Bertrand's really hard to line because I don't have a lot of baseline stuff for him. So
it's hard to line because nobody knows who he is.
Yeah.
That doesn't help either.
It's not great. Yeah.
We got Ellis 8.5, Noonan.
Oh, is that okay?
DK and ESPN. Yeah.
That seems high, doesn't it?
It's probably a tad high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of tackles. That's a lot.
I could tell you right now what the Ellis number is. Now again, I might give it a manual bump.
6.
Yeah, I might give it a manual bump because of the perceived role change slightly.
Sure, yeah. You get 17 tackles, they got to go somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, but not a lot. I mean, they could just go, do you play more box snaps for Jesse Bates or something like that, which definitely could be something that happens here without a
look at us Wednesday afternoon talking tackle props.
I love this. We can do a show. I have Ellis for 7.2 for Ellis. So even with a manual bump, he's that's a little high.
All right.
And let me give you, Let me give you another. I'll give you a Tampa Bay nugget. I believe Tampa Bay has been kind of a tough spot. Yeah. So Tampa Bay, about 2 tackles below average to linebackers per game this season, and a little bit above just their overall tackle rate to linebackers, about 1% below league average. So not a great linebacker matchup. Extra tackle stuff. It's usually Friday show, but tackles on them.
I'm sort of jumped the gun on that one. I figured with the Thursday game, I'd squeeze it in.
No, I love it.
It's great.
I could talk tackles and tackle process and sacks and all that stuff all day long. So actually going to be my lean. The last game, and we'll get us out of here. Unless Connor has something too. I like Denver under 3 in the spot against the Raiders. Again, we don't know what's going on with Max Crosby. We don't know what's going on with Devontae Adams. But again, the Denver D, and Connor touched on some of it, it's been really surprising. They've allowed the fewest red zone trips in the league. They've been amazing on third downs, which again, that can be highly variant, but like leading the league in yards per drive. They only trail the Chargers in points per drive. Run D and pass D in terms of overall EPA are top 5 in the league. Riley Moss has been a really nice, just kind of up and comer. We were kind of expecting, all right, outside of Surtain, they're going to be able to pick on everyone. Like Jaquan McMillan in the slot has been really good. They are 2nd in total sacks, 6th in quarterback pressures, and 3rd in overall pressures. And Gardner Minshew holds onto the football for too long. Again, top 6th, I think he is, in pressure to sack rate. I think it's a nice day for Zach Allen. It's a nice day for Jonathan Cooper. I don't think they score a ton of points here, so even unders on the Raiders team total. And I like the Broncos at home laying less than 3.
Love it. Only other note I had was with what Adam said about the Bears. I saw there's a bunch of 3.5s popping earlier. I mean, I was dreaming when I thought maybe it would get to 3. It did not get to 3. It's now back out to 4 basically everywhere. So if you like it, probably left to go there. I mean, I think it seems like virtually no shot that it gets down to 3 at this point. But, that was the note that I had there for them because I thought it's still a pretty sizable mismatch in favor of Chicago.
Adam, I took more time than I promised. It's hard not to talk ball with you. Greatly appreciate your time.
So no worries at all. I appreciate
it. Tell the folks if they somehow are not familiar with your stuff, where they can find all of your stuff.
I would say the best place is the Simple Handicap podcast on Apple and Spotify every day, 5 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Pacific. And then I'm also doing a lot over on the RAS Picks YouTube channel as well. But you can probably just search for me on YouTube and something will come up that will get you where you need to be. So that's the 2 home spots right now for the year.
Grateful for your time. Again, Adam has been in this industry in a multitude of ways for a very long time, understands the market and market dynamics as good as anyone, and we greatly appreciate you joining us today. Reminder again, Move the Line, 2 episodes a week, 4 for 4 Bets YouTube channel, wherever you listen to podcasts. Come back on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Connor, myself, John Hyslop for props. We'll see you all then. Thanks, everyone.